The last few years, it seems like some of the Apple product naming schemes and just the positioning of the different products have gotten to be a little bit confusing. They've kind of fixed some of the issues, but there's also still a couple issues with the naming scheme and also just the amount of products that they're putting out. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about how Apple can fix their product naming and marketing strategies. And I think they are starting to do some of these things, but also I would love to see Apple just go all in on this strategy because it makes so much sense. And the strategy that I think they should do is the Air and the Pro strategy. So basically, Apple has all their different product lines from AirPods to iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, and they've also even got things like the iMac and the Mac Studio, the Mac Mini. So what I would love to see happen is for every class of product that Apple has, they could make an Air model of it and they could make a Pro model of it. So the Air model would be a device that lives up to all of Apple's standards and is just really quality, has the great user interfaces and just the quality of life features that Apple is known for. But then the Pro models should be the models that take it a step above to give extra features that power users are going to appreciate, and also just for media and creative professionals who need a little bit more power underneath the hood. So if we talk about a device like the Apple Watch, they've pretty much done this. They have the Apple Watch and they also have the Apple Watch Ultra. But then with the Apple Watch model, they also have the SE, which starts to confuse people a little bit when there's some features that are missing that should probably be baseline features for an Apple Watch. But at the same time, it's nice because it does give users an opportunity to get into the Apple Watch at, I think it's like the $250 price point versus the $400 price point for the standard Apple Watches or the higher Apple Watch Ultra price point. But what I would love to see is just don't do any Apple Watch SE series, just do the standard series and the Ultra series, and then it would make things a lot easier whenever a consumer went to go buy, and just a lot easier to recommend to people. So with the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, they pretty much fixed this problem, but it still does get a little bit confusing. So they have the MacBook Air, and it comes in both the 13 and 15-inch screen sizes, which is perfect because they're basically the same computer, but a user can decide if you want the bigger or smaller machine, and you used to have to upgrade to get the 15 or 16-inch Pro if you wanted the bigger screen. So they fixed that with the Air. I think the MacBook Air lineup makes perfect sense. But the MacBook Pro lineup is still a little bit dicey because some of those Pro models come with not enough RAM and too small of SSDs that are built in them. So I think those are the features that Apple really needs to put into the MacBook Pro lineup, just to elevate them a little bit higher than the MacBook Air. And then it's going to make more sense for a consumer. If you're just a typical college student or you just do typical tasks around the house, you need a solid machine, get the Air, decide which screen you want. If you're just doing note taking, word processing, and stuff like that, makes perfect sense. And then with the Pro, if you want to do any kind of video editing, photo editing, coding, that's the computer that you want to get then, because it's going to have higher RAM and it's going to start at a 512 gigabyte SSD. To me, that would make so much sense. And then what I really hope they do with the new Mac Minis that are about to come out in the Mac Studio, basically we can have the Mac Mini as the do-it-all desktop computer. Bring your own screen, do whatever you want with it. One model. Don't worry about different processors. They can do different RAM in it if they want, but it doesn't really matter. Start that one out at the 512 gigabyte SSD or even the 256. Again, it doesn't really matter for the Mac Mini, but then make the Mac Studio the do-it-all professional desktop computer if you want to do photo editing, video editing, and coding. I think that having the M2 and the M2 Pro Mac Minis was kind of confusing for people, and also just the way they changed the ports up a little bit. It was kind of a weird intermediary model between the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, and it made some people unsure of if they should buy a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio. So if you just remove that model from it, then the desktop lineup makes perfect sense. And then the iMac lineup, we haven't had a true iMac Pro in a long time. We've just had the one iMac model. And I think it would make so much sense if the iMac was just a do-it-all desktop computer for someone who wants it all in one. You can recommend that to anyone who's not doing that pro-grade work. And then the iMac Pro is the one that's going to have an even bigger screen. It's going to have a bigger SSD stock. Start with like a 512 or a 1 terabyte SSD. Make sure it comes with at least 16 or even 32 gigabytes of RAM standard. It's going to make complete sense for the pros. So I think if Apple could take that strategy, kind of like they just did with the AirPods, they have the 4 and they also have the AirPod Pro 2. The one weird thing about that, though, is they have two models of the AirPods 4, and I think if they would have just done it with the active noise cancellation or not having any noise cancellation, then they could do the AirPod 4 and the AirPod Pro 2. It would make a lot of sense because there's just two models to pick from. get the one if you want your sealed ears and your noise cancellation, and get the other AirPods Pro 4 and get the other AirPod 4, I mean, if you don't want to have the noise cancellation. That would make a lot of sense. So that's my thoughts on how Apple can simplify all their lineups. Just do a standard model or call it an Air, and then they also do a Pro version. But you got to make sure that the distinction between the Pro and the standard model really makes a lot of sense in terms of the amount of features that it offers, and also just the baseline that they come with, because we really need to stop having the Pro machines that don't start at a Pro level on baseline, because then people have to upgrade and it just gets a little more confusing to recommend to people. This is a part of my new, more conversational style of videos I'm going to be trying to intersperse within all my reviews. If you have any thoughts about this content, or if you enjoyed it, leave a comment down below. I'll be really curious to hear them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming content.